Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Access to Insight. My name is Ollie Ben. I'm the Director of Philanthropy and Social Impact for the Jewish Community Foundation. We've been doing this Access to Insight series since the lockdown began, and the purpose has really been to create community and to help everyone make sense of the increasingly crazy world that we are living in. We've had a number of really fascinating sessions. And in fact, you can view all of those sessions on our website and on JCF's YouTube page. Some of those sessions have included an amazing discussion with Robert Price about resilience, understanding about vulnerable local populations in San Diego. We've heard from Superintendent Cindy Martin and a number of other amazing topics and speakers. Today's session is going to be squarely geared towards the arts. We have a superstar panel of some of San Diego's most influential artistic leaders. But before we get going, I'm going to turn things over to our CEO, Beth Cyril, who is going to be providing a quick update from the Jewish Community Foundation. Beth, over to you.
Thank you, Ollie. Hi, everybody. I know we have a number of people on the call today who are longtime members of the JCF family, so welcome. We also have a number of people who are less familiar to the foundation, and we welcome you. And I just wanted to share for a minute a little introduction about the Jewish Community Foundation. We are San Diego's largest philanthropic funder. We facilitated a little over $1.6 billion in grants in our 53 approximately year history. And we are very nimble in responding to crisis. And so we've had 3 COVID-related community funds that have raised about $2.5 million, one in the Jewish community, and one around public health issues, and the third around vulnerable populations in San Diego suffering as a result of the pandemic. We also have a number of resources on our website right now, and we'll be doing some more donor education around supporting communities of color, both in San Diego and around the country. I just want to do a little update on the COVID funds and what we've granted. A lot of you know that the Jewish Community COVID Response Fund is a partnership with the Jewish Federation and the Leash Tag Foundation. And we have made, I want to say, 30-ish grants. I actually do not have the exact number with me. I meant to. Those are covering needs from organization needs, and as well as people who really need to pay their humanitarian needs, people who are needing to pay for food and rent and the like. And we have also made an additional 22 grants around public health issues, as I said, and supporting vulnerable populations across the community. And you can see the organizations that we have been so fortunate to support with the $2.5 million that we've raised in emergency response funds. We are super grateful to our generous donors. Before I turn it back to Ollie, I did want to acknowledge, I know Ollie is going to introduce Todd Salivate, who's our moderator today. Some of you in the community will know him as the director of the Lupinski Family San Diego Jewish Arts Festival, which sponsors and creates the Women of Valor program. If you have not watched any of the videos that have been released in the last couple of weeks portraying the women of valor in our community, I really encourage you to do that. So I really want to say congratulations, Todd. Fabulously well done at a time when you had to do it online. And I want to offer a special congratulations to Charlene Wallach, who's the Chief Impact Officer here at the Jewish Community Foundation in San Diego. She's our Chief Impact Officer and also a Woman of Valor. And our board chair, Janet Ashetel, was also named a Woman of Valor this year in the Jewish community. And they are indeed, along with the other 4 fabulous women, indeed women of valor. So with that, congratulations, Todd. Thank you for being willing to moderate our conversation today, and welcome to David and Martha and Maria. And I will turn it back to Ollie and look forward to hearing the conversation. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Beth, for that update from the foundation. So I would love to take a second now to introduce our moderator for today's panel. Todd Salivate is a theater director, a writer, and a producer. He's the associate artistic director of the San Diego Repertory Theater and the founding artistic director of the Lipinski Family San Diego Jewish Arts Festival. Todd is also on the faculty of UCSD in both the departments of theater and dance and the Rady School of Management. He's also very active in the San Diego Jewish community and has served as board chair of Congregation Adat Yeshurun, Torah High School, and San Diego Hebrew Day. He is one of the creators of the Jewish Festival's Women of Valor program, which, as Beth mentioned, this year featured both board chair Janet Ashetel and Chief Impact Officer Charlene Wallach of the Jewish Community Foundation. And those videos can be viewed, all of them, on San Diego Rep's YouTube channel. So Todd, at this point, I would love to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Ali. And thank you, Beth, for your generous words about the Rep, the Jewish Arts Festival, and our Women of Valor program. And thank you to the Jewish Community Foundation for your leadership and commitment to strengthening our San Diego community. I'm very honored to be moderating today's conversation. I feel more than ever that art has an essential role to play in the healing, shaping, and celebrating of our community and our lives. But in this time where we're unable to do live performances, the arts needs a lot of creativity and a lot of support. Stella Adler, the great acting teacher, wrote, "Life beats you down and crushes the soul. Art reminds you that you have one." And Toni Morrison, the author, says, "The best art is political, and you ought to be able to make it unquestionably political and irrevocably beautiful at the same time." Our three panelists today are highly accomplished, innovative arts leaders. Our first panelist is Maryam England. She is executive director of Oceanside Museum of Art. She was trained as a painter and a printmaker. She joined OMA in the fall of 2016 with 25 years of museum and nonprofit management expertise. Prior to OMA, Maria managed curatorial affairs, art education, and collections at Berkshire Museum. In a recent post on the OMA Facebook page, Maria writes, "Recent months have been turbulent, taxing, and difficult while navigating a pandemic, as well as recent tragic events in the Black community. This is a time for change and opportunity. Ultimately, love and art are the greatest powers we can share." Our second guest is David Bennett, the General Director of San Diego Opera. Under his leadership since 2015, the company has embarked on a series of community-based initiatives, including free public performances, family-friendly operas to better serve the diverse San Diego region. In 2016, the company debuted its popular Detour series, which explores the expressive nature of opera with the potency of intimate theater. Previously, David was Gotham Chamber Opera's managing director and executive director. He's vice president of the board of directors of Opera America and has been one of my partners in this year's Jewish Arts Festival. He says, "Grand opera will always be part of what San Diego Opera presents, but investigating what are other kinds of opera that could be specifically relevant to this community is what is most exciting." Our third guest is Martha Gilmer. She is Chief Executive Officer of the San Diego Symphony. She came to San Diego in 2014 after a 35-year career at Chicago's Symphony Orchestra. Martha has initiated an annual citywide January Arts Festival, engaged leading artists for their San Diego premieres, commissioned new works, and presented several West Coast premieres. Additionally, Martha's leadership has led to successful rebrand of the summer series Bayside Summer Nights, inaugurated jazz at the Jacob series, and is bringing to reality a highly innovative outdoor space for the symphony we're all waiting to see opened, the Shell. She says music has the power to change lives in good times and in hard times. It is our human desire to share the joy of music. We can't wait to hear again the music we all love. Welcome, Maria, David, and Martha. I'd like to start with a question just so our audiences can hear how life is for you during this time of quarantine. I just want to ask a question I've been asking my classes. Is there something you've experienced during quarantine that you want to continue once we all go out into the world? Should we start with Maria?
Yes, I think it has, for me personally, it's deepened the relationships and the conversations that I've been having, not only personally with friends and family, but even with the museum staff, and how much more connected and deliberate we've had to be because of the methods of how we're able to communicate, since we're not in our busy everyday world. Not that we haven't been busier than ever. But that's been my personal experience. And I really welcome that and really look forward to keeping that being part of my own personal practice.
Thank you. David, what about for you?
Similarly, what we've found is the necessity of communicating via the internet, Zoom, like we're communicating right now, is actually an opportunity, right? So we can check in on each other in ways that we weren't able to before. And so I'm hoping that that will be something that will continue once we're able to gather again. This opportunity for not only us to see each other as a staff, but for our patrons and our audience to actually check in with each other. It's been a wonderful opportunity.
Thank you. And Martha?
Well, I think for me, never taking for granted being able to be in a live performance. It was, didn't think I ever did before, but after 40 plus years of going to a lot of concerts every week, it became always exciting, but still routine. You just assumed it would be there. And to just understand how special it is to have people be able to be together in community. I just, every time I hear a live concert again, I don't want to forget the isolation of not hearing that.
Martha, I think we all share that longing to be back together in a room, sharing a live performance together. So let's get to the meat of the topic today. I want to know, what are the most significant challenges that each of your organizations has faced in dealing with this pandemic? Should we start with Maria?
Well, if I reflect back to the very beginning, during the first moments of the stay-at-home order, was really, we didn't have operating instructions on how to operate in a pandemic environment, and the pace of change that was driven by the pandemic was in many instances overwhelming. And it was almost like, for me, and I believe for the staff, was like we were flying the plane while we were building it. And I think that we rose to the challenge quite beautifully, and pivoted really essentially to really connect with community, with constituents, and really be able to express how much we cared for those constituents, and having those really, being able to reach out and having those more intimate conversations that we might not have had otherwise.
And David, what about for the opera?
Well, like most performing arts organizations, the rhythm of how we operate is based around performances, right? And as we operate as a company, but also how do we operate with our patrons and with our community, is always focused around what is the next production that's going to be happening. All of our engagement activities are focused around that, and how we just order our days and our weeks as a company. So it's been interesting to try to find a new rhythm for ourselves and be intentional about how we can actually gather.
And for the symphony, Martha?
I think the hardest thing for us is that we have a lot of people to look after. We have 82 full-time musicians, and we have 67 full-time staff members, in addition to front of house, and of course our audience and our San Diego Symphony family and donors. And looking after the well-being of our employees certainly is what occupies my thoughts most of the time. Also, I think that not being able to be in a room engaging in conversation and in the workplace face to face I do think that as you work closely together, that there's a shared kind of sentiment of an unspoken language. It's nuance of, looking somebody in the eye or seeing somebody's reaction that just gets lost on the screen. And so having to kind of over communicate in that way, I find it, it's challenging. And sometimes I think it can lead to misunderstanding or lack of that just assumption that you're on the same page. So it's a tricky communication system.
Yeah, it's interesting. We kid ourselves into thinking that, oh, we're having all these conversations over Zoom, because I don't know how your life is, but I'm in conversation more than I've ever been before. But we miss the nuance of being in a room with people and the unspoken things that you get and the way you can bounce things off of people when you're in a room together. Well, the situation had so many challenges, but as artistic organizations, I'm very curious about how you've met the challenges and what ideas you've come up with. Sometimes the adversity can create all sorts of innovation, and curious as to what are the new ideas that you've come through from this time of challenge. Maria.
Well, we had to reinvent ourselves, and overnight we had to reinvent how are we going to connect with our community and what would those programs look like. And we found that what we were able to come up with, so small talk series where we had intimate dialogue, panels like this with artists, doing intimate artist studio tours, doing more formal lectures and webinars. We found that we were able to go deeper into the kind of content that people really wanted, that we weren't doing before. So it actually has turned out to be an incredible opportunity for us to have a deeper conversation with people, and our constituents, our members, our donors, they get to be in the room, so to speak, with the artists in ways that they didn't when we were just showing artwork on the walls. And yes, we would have those same kind of intimate experiences, but they were fewer and more far between. And also we were able to redefine what accessibility means. We have found that our audience has grown. A lecture that we might have normally had 75 people, we might have 180 or 214 people attend. So that whole idea of accessibility really expanded, and a lot of what we've experimented with and what we've been producing has ramifications that we are going to take with us when we open our doors again to the public.
Maria, in being able to talk more frequently and intimately with your community, with your audience, what have you heard which is surprising?
I think that we heard that people are really, we get a lot of responses from community members, emails, notes, and that kind of thing. I think that how much they love the museum is one thing. How we are, in this time, you don't think of the arts as an essential service, so to speak, but during the time where people are anxious or fearful or they are isolated, we were a bright spot in their world. And I'm sure my colleagues here, that the programs that they produced were as well. People were really happy that we were there and that we were doing as much as we were doing, and that it really met their needs, and we met them where they were in their homes, and so we were there. So for us, it was really never a question of going home and waiting it out. It was really, how are we going to continue to be that essential service, so to speak, for people.
That's nice. Yeah, you've done such nice work on your social media platforms. Your Facebook page has so much cool information on it. David, you're so innovative without a pandemic. You're so creative and have brought so much innovation to the opera. What has the situation caused your organization to think about?
Well, so we've been spending a lot of time thinking, clearly we're in this situation now, but we have great faith and total belief that we're going to come out of this, right? But we're going to come out of it in a different world. And how we gather large audiences, when we're at the Civic Theater, we may have an audience of 3,000, and then gathering artists and all of our staff. And, we can have up to 300 people involved in one of our bigger operas. So we have a lot of challenges. But we had already started doing some innovative thinking before COVID, and we had done this activity called a hackathon. And a hackathon is really something that happens, we took a cue from engineering schools. It's really an ideation session that happens mostly around the world of technology. And we created an opera hackathon, and we did this summer. We're now in the process of creating our second opera hackathon, where we will focus on having the participants really address how technology can help us in the future. And what we did in the first one is we gathered together composers, librettists, designers, scenic designers, lighting designers, costume designers, with people that work in current technology. So studying haptics, which I didn't know about, which is touch and sound together, augmented reality, virtual reality, machine learning, bringing all of these people together for 48 hours and having them help inform how we could look at the technology for the future of opera. It's going to be even more important now with version 2 that we will try to do with COVID in mind. And I have a little bit of a video that I think we can perhaps show, a little activity from our first opera hack.
Oh, cool. Ollie, do you want to show that?
What I find most exciting about this opera hack is, number one, it's the first one that I know of that's ever happened that was technology centered. And what we're basically doing here is creating a nationwide brain trust to solve major problems that have existed in opera for quite some time with technology, or at least explore ways in which technology could solve them.
Hi, my name is Hanoi. I'm currently an AI resident at Google Brain. I have a background in music composition and also jazz piano, but I also do a lot of machine learning, and we are developing a baton that has sensors on board, and coupled with machine learning is able to detect when the conductor is actually signaling a downbeat. So if there's a rubato or there's an accelerando, our system would be able to track these changes in real time, and we would be able to send these signals to other folks in the performance, such as the lighting designer or the set changes, or even like a video that's being played, and these things can now be cued using the signals that are coming from our device.
So that was just a small example of some of the innovative ideas that came out of the first opera hack. We chose 3 ideas, and actually this baton idea, which I found so fascinating, we didn't move forward, but we were able to provide some funding for research and development of 3 ideas that are now going to be presented in August of this summer. And then we'll try to move into, we're seeking funding right now for Hackathon 2.
Oh, that's so interesting. Martha, at the Symphony, you have so many big plans in the work. I wonder if you can share some of the innovations that you've come with during this time.
Sure, and we have a little PowerPoint to go with that as well. I think one of the things that's interesting about this time is that we're usually focused on a collective of an orchestra, and our innovation has really been to focus on the individuals of the orchestra. So next slide, you can see that on Tuesdays, we've started a series called Lunch and Listen. It's about 40 minutes, and it focuses on several of our musicians one at a time. The second, I think, is the next slide, which is Aaron Dowry, who is in our percussion section. You can see Aaron here playing Bach on the marimba in his home. But he talked about his life in isolation, in seclusion, and how he keeps himself motivated. The first of the 3 was Chris Smith. The next slide. Chris is our principal trumpet, and Chris, having a directional and rather loud instrument, is forced to find a place to practice. He's practicing in the 3rd sub-basement of his apartment building, and he's recording etudes, but he also recorded all 3 parts in this work and performed it for us virtually, and then talked about, again, how he's approaching this time away. And then on this past Tuesday, the next slide is Jing Bocat, one of our violinists. And Jing performed and then spoke and then performed a duet playing both parts. But Jane talked about how her connection with the audience and her father's disappointment and unrealized career living in China, playing Chinese flute, and then being, through the Cultural Revolution, forced to go to work on farms and in factories. So these three individuals just sort of come to light so that when we all return, we can look and focus on them and see them in the orchestra in a way we haven't before. Next slide is another series we did is called, or are doing, Listen Here. First, we've been focusing on Beethoven, again, next slide. And Beethoven over 3 weeks, Beethoven Ninth Symphony, which would have been performed in May, Beethoven Eroica Symphony last night, which had been done by Raphael Payari earlier this year, and Beethoven 6 next year. The features are Jared McBurney, who's our creative consultant, who's in London and speaks to us from there. Also Raphael Payari, our music director, who is here in San Diego and has really been helpful in thinking about the future and connecting with our audiences in the interim. And then members of our orchestra who appear as soloists. And in this case, Jeremy Kurtz-Harris played this beautiful bass figure that appears in the last movement of Beethoven 9, and it sounded sort of recognizable, but it was at about a quarter of the tempo. And he said, it's lovely that way, but this is how fast it has to go. And he took the absolute risk of playing it up to tempo for us. So finally, also fourth horn, yeah, Doug was also featured. But yes, next slide. We have for the last 3 summers, we've hosted a high school ambassadors program, and we did this one virtually with students from area high schools, from Chula Vista, La Mesa, from downtown schools, and they were together for 3 days, and they get coaching from our staff and also coaching in financial understanding, emotional well-being, and they ask questions and come up with a final project. So we had 6 musicians that met with them and members of the staff. Raphael Payari and I both came, and they were able to fulfill this ambassadors. Usually they'd be out at the outdoor site, and last year they raised $5,000 from our various attendees for military concerts, but we at least got to see them this year. It's job readiness. And then finally, we might have another page of ambassadors. Yeah, we can go through. I never thought that the construction of the outdoor site wouldn't be the biggest challenge of this year. And in retrospect, it is going along extremely well, and we had many other challenges. But the next slide, you can see that the shell is really coming together beautifully. Construction should be complete around the end of August. And we do not know when we can do concerts, but we believe if we can and when we can, the first concerts will be here in the out of doors. And on Sunday, this past week, we were able to get 10 musicians, which you can see in the next, there's another picture of the shell, but 10 musicians on the stage playing Simple Gifts, socially distanced by 10 feet. And we recorded that, and it will be part of KPBS's broadcast on July 3rd as a special celebration for our Independence Day celebration in San Diego. So that was great. We got to understand what this new reality is in terms of socially distancing our musicians and keeping them safe. I think that's it.
Thank you, Martha. We're also excited about the opening of the shell, how amazing that looks. And thank you so much for clearing up the mystery about who's been playing trumpet in my garage. I've been wondering.
Just
Maria,
don't record him.
Maria, did you want to share a video with us?
Oh, I did, yeah. Let me give it a little preface. It wasn't produced for this program, so it is a montage of some of the things we've been doing, and it was developed by our local KOCT community television station, and they really wanted to help us out. So there is a little bit of a shameless plug at the end of it that has to do with our upcoming art auction, which is this Sunday, June 28th. That's open and free to the community. And what I do want to say, though, about that is that it's an opportunity for us to the museum to also support, not only will people who come to the art auction and purchase art and will have the pleasure of living with art by local artists, it's an opportunity to support the museum, but also support the artists in the art community who are really hurting at these times. So I just wanted to preface that because it does have a little ending with a plug for the art auction.
Okay.
The museum has been working harder than ever to bring our programming to our constituents in their homes. The team has been able to reprogram all of what we have to offer, and doing that all virtually online with live stream, with virtual programming, and the results have been incredible. A lot of our constituents are tuning in from their own home to listen to artist talks, to listen to interviews, to participate in lectures. And I think that we're meeting people right where their needs are. We're supporting our community by providing an opportunity for people to feel connected to each other, to be part of something that's really inspirational and brings a lot of hope. So one of the ways you can participate is to buy art. So not only will you be supporting the artists, you'll be supporting the museum that supports those artists. The Oceanside Museum of Art has an art auction, and that was scheduled for March 28th. And unfortunately, we had to cancel that event. But in the true creative forum of artists, we have reinvented it, and that will be coming to you as a virtual art auction throughout the month of June. So we will be getting information to you on how you can participate. We want you and encourage you to buy art from the local artists of our region. That is an extension of the Oceanside Museum of Art's mission. We are here to celebrate and showcase the art of the artists in our community. And that's another way that you can help your local Oceanside Museum of Art.
Maria, you mentioned about helping the artists. David, I'm wondering, you have opera singers, you have an orchestra. What are your artists facing? And just to people that are watching, I'll ask a few more questions and then we'll turn it over to the audience for questions. And please submit your questions to the Q&A and they'll be brought to me and I'll be able to ask them on your behalf. David?
Well, we'll start off by saying that we are incredibly lucky to have the musicians of the San Diego Symphony as our orchestra. But the majority of the rest of our artists are freelance artists, right? Only work when we are producing, and just like we had to stop producing this spring, really the entire opera industry stopped. So they're really struggling, and this doesn't not just opera singers. Of course, we employ stage managers and designers and directors, and all of them have really had all of their work cease. And one thing that we did try to do is we had the productions that we were not able to produce this spring. We have postponed, we haven't canceled. So we will be producing all of those. So we're holding the value of everyone's contract. And we did honor part of those contracts for everyone now to help them with their cash flow, their own personal cash flow, taking a portion of what we would pay them in the future and just helping them now because everyone's work dried up. Yeah.
I just completed a few days of rehearsal for a new play by Ali Viterbi called Linguicide. When we were done, the actors, they thanked me so much because first of all, they haven't had work, but also they haven't been in a rehearsal hall. And it's so hard for the artists not to be able to collaborate and create. I'm so happy to be able to provide that. Martha, what are you doing with the symphony musicians?
Well, as I just mentioned, the brass were able to play together last weekend for the first time. They had a rehearsal around someone's backyard pool, and they then were on the stage the next day, and they were absolutely giddy to be back together again. And I think it was a little like I was talking about being in a conference room and picking up on the energy of the other people in the room. Mm-hmm. The players depend on the sounds of others to return to a normal life for themselves. It's not just hearing themselves play, but it's the imagination of your stand partner or the sound of the person behind you that propels you forward artistically. I will say we've stayed very close to Rafael Perry. He is it's his first year as music director, and he had 6 weeks and then the year was interrupted. And he's 40 years old. He had an incredible lineup of performances this year, including 5 more weeks with us and the LA Philharmonic and many others. They were all canceled. And so he has been here, not even having all of his scores with him. Fortunately, his wife went back to play in Europe and brought scores. Now he has more to study. But a conductor without an orchestra can't make sound. The ideas are in his head, and yet no vehicle, no resemblance of normal life. So sustaining him is really a high priority for us. And he's just an incredible communicator. And through one of these programs in particular that he's featured in terms of Listen Here, I think his humanity, his vulnerability, and his deep musical knowledge has really come forth in a way we probably wouldn't have been able to experience it in just attending live performances.
I know something everyone is curious about is when we can reopen our spaces, how are you going to reopen the spaces? What precautions are you going to take? What can audiences expect about the experience when the spaces are reopened? Maria, do you want to start?
Well, I think I have the easier challenge over performing arts venues.
Your paintings don't breathe, yeah.
Exactly. Right, and it's much easier to space people out. So adhering to social distancing is a lot easier. There isn't a lot of touching, typically in a visual art museum at least. And so we are working right now, pulling together how we will operationally invite visitors back to the museum. Really more, the concerns really have to do around just flow of admission when people are coming in. And we're pretty confident that when people are in the galleries and everything, that'll be, won't be a problem. And then just really sort of some housekeeping issues like that bathroom facilities and how we can manage that. So, I mean, there are really practical issues, and our concern really is to create a really wonderful experience and a great environment for everyone and anyone who comes in. And it's interesting, I don't know if you all experience the same thing, but people really are diverging on polar opposites of how they're responding and how they're what they feel to being safe. And so we're trying to figure out how to navigate that so that when we have visitors coming, that it's their expectations are met, and they sort of know before they go what the expectations will be, just so we have positive experiences for everybody. So we're looking at somewhere around August 1st as our reopening date, and really look forward to inviting people back.
Oh, that's wonderful. David, what about for the opera? I can't imagine that you're envisioning an audience of 50 in the Civic Center. Yeah,
so we do have some productions that we hope to be able to bring to audiences this fall. How and where and when we will do those are still a little bit up in the air. We are looking at some alternative areas where we produce out of doors, because of course the distancing requirements are a little bit different. Just the safety issues surrounding outdoors is different than in an indoor space. Martha and I just had a discussion yesterday about, we have so many elements of safety that we have to pay attention to and be really mindful and responsible about. The safety of and the spacing of the musicians of the symphony is one. How we gather and perform and rehearse safely, not just solo singers, but a chorus, all of those in addition to what we do with our audience. So there's a lot that's still yet to be determined. And I do believe that even if, the fall is right on top of us, so we're trying to make some determination around that, when we're allowed to safely gather at the Civic, and let's say that doesn't happen this fall and we're able to do it in the spring, we're still going to be in a period of time where spacing and safety is going to be very different than it was before, right? Yeah. So there's so much that's still up in the air. And also we know that the county and the public health officials have begun their process of different phases, and large assembly is absolutely in phase 4 and it's still yet to be determined, right?
Well, Martha, you may have some interesting possibilities with the Shell opening up in an outdoor space, but what are you thinking about how you'll re-engage your audiences in performance?
Well, one of the things we're watching, there's a study being done at University of Colorado Boulder, and that will tell us a lot about how to seat an orchestra how many feet apart. You know, with the brass players, we did 10 feet apart. Some places in Europe have been opening with maybe 2 meters, you know, so 6-7 feet. But in terms of audience, we have a rather robust plan. We've been working with the Padres and with Live Nation and other large venue people used to running live venues. We have a coalition talking about best practices, including staggered entrances, directed exits, shorter concerts so that the bathroom line is not an issue, probably elimination of food and beverage in the beginning, touchless ticketing so that you can, you know, flash your iPhone or Android at not at a person or somebody holding onto it, but really at a kiosk. All sorts of those kinds of things, plus cleaning of the venue. Our venue, once it's complete, will be open to the public. And so we're looking at how cleaning will take place. There's a lot of science and there's a lot of ideas out there of how to manage that. But we also could consider the orchestra performing on that stage and capturing it virtually, because we've heard from our audience members, they don't know that they're going to feel comfortable, but we really want to get the orchestra into your living room if you don't feel like you can come into the outdoor space or into the hall.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had an amazing experience with Women of Valor. I would say that our viewership for each of the videos that we put out is double what we would have in the live theater. And we had it on 6 successive evenings as opposed to just on one evening. So I'm finding that audiences are very interested in experiences that they can have safely in their own homes. We're getting some interesting questions on the chat. I want to ask one, and I'll open it up to all 3 of you. So the first question is are there innovative ways that you've been able to support cross-sector, such as social agencies and other nonprofits, with frontline workers?
We have a project that we're working on. Well, first of all, when this first started in March, the museum did offer its venue to the city of Oceanside and to the our local hospital and to some of the food banks and food services in case they needed an alternate venue. That need hasn't arisen, but I did want to just share that. Also, we've made a partnership with the Women's Resource Center. It's an agency that works with women who are trying to make their way out of domestic violence and sexual assault environments, and they have a residential community. And in conversation between our team and their team, we wanted to see what we could do to be of assistance and share what we know best, which is art and art making. And so we designed a box, a kit, which we're finishing up this week. It's called the Imagination Art Box, and it's a literal box of art supplies and activities that will be brought to the residential clients of this facility and provide an opportunity for a positive interaction around art making and engagement and social engagement that doesn't require screen time, because when we were in our conversation, all of these families were overwhelmed with how much they had to consume, their young children having to be doing distance learning online and for themselves. So we wanted to provide an alternate that was off-screen time of art making and that wonderful engagement that can happen when people are sitting around. And we made sure that the activities in the art boxes are cross-developmental, so any age is comfortable doing the projects, and they also connect with our local artists and some of the projects we've been doing at the museum. And so that was one way that we're connecting with a cross-sector.
Nice. David or Martha?
Martha, want to go ahead?
Yeah, so we are working with our partners at the hospitals. We did a video and in gratitude to frontline workers, but we're also making sure that our broadcast can be streamed in hospitals and senior centers. We have been doing some work with the hospice center at Sharp, and there's actually someone that we're aware of who's in hospice care at his home, a donor, and musicians are volunteering to go play outside the home. And also we're arranging for our musicians to go to Rady Children's Hospital to play at the shift change. Playing in person is still a little bit risky. So this is just now kind of emerging. In fact, we were probably even farther ahead a week and a half ago or so until things started to spike. But being present for people and having them have some access to live music wherever possible is how we've been focusing on it.
I want to close with a question that comes from Charlene Wallach, one of our 6 Women of Valor. And I think it's an amazing question, which is, can you speak about the mental well-being that art is providing in this time? And I guess I could extend that is, what are your thoughts about what art is providing to our audience in this time? David, you want to start?
Sure. So, you used the word heal before, I think, earlier in the conversation. Art does many things for us, right? Challenges us, inspires us, calls us to action, heals. Those are all things that art does for us. And performing arts are really gathering, and being together is essential to the performing arts. So although we're missing that now, I think all of us know about our own personal relationship with art. And I'm very interested to see at the end of this how artists will respond to the current environment and what we'll see coming out the other end.
That's what I keep reminding the writers I work with. Is like, there's a lot to learn, a lot to take in, but make sure you're creating right
Absolutely.
now too.
Yeah.
Maria, what would you like to say?
Well, one of the things about Oceanside Museum of Art is that it was founded by community volunteers. And so that for some of the volunteers that founded the museum, they wanted a cultural experience of merit that they didn't have to go, say, to LA or San Diego for. But for the majority, they founded the museum as a community resource, as a convening, as a gathering place, as a way to bring people together, and as a way to have a really a showcase, something positive for the city of Oceanside, and a destination status venue. So one of the things that we find is that we do miss our community, and we miss the Oceanside members and donors and constituents really love to party, and we used to throw a lot of events, and so we really are missing that. But one of the things that we do feel, so that sense of connection, is that through some of the programming we have been able to create some continuity in that sense of connection. And also, David was saying, that the healing aspect and that engagement. And also I'll just add, so in addition to what he had shared, I'll add one thing to that as well, is just in these times where we're all being challenged, it's, I think, really valuable that at visual arts and the arts, we allow us to experience the perspective of the other, of how they are looking out from their perspective to the world. And so that's one of the really beautiful things that art can share is that. So
thank you, Maria.
Yeah.
We're just about out of time, but Martha, I'd love to hear your answer to the question.
Well, I think, we were talking about first responders and first line workers right now, and I feel that when people can come back together, the arts will be there to take the next step in terms of healing. I think that power of the breathing in together of an orchestra or singers or whatever. But I also think that that one gets inspiration from Beethoven. I'll close with Beethoven, his Ninth Symphony. With Beethoven's music, there's always darkness. And I think that would apply to composers across and artists across our 3 spectrums. Artists reflect the darkness of life, and often then the light that comes and the joy. And last night, talking about the Eroica, which certainly has dark passages, or Beethoven 9 last week, you will remember, you can relate to the fact that there are really challenging times in everyone's life. But to see the joy on the players' faces when they were able to play music and talk about music and laughter, I just think that lifts us up. And so we can take notice from the past and look forward, knowing that this human condition has survived all these years and that we will come out of this with joy.
Thank you, Martha. This has been very inspiring for me, and I want to thank our 3 guests, to thank Maria Mingalone and David Bennett and Martha Gilmer. Thank you so much for joining us on the Jewish Community Foundation's Access to Insight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Before we drop off, I would love to first of all reiterate on behalf of the foundation our gratitude to the three panelists, and also to Todd for really a wonderful job of. So thank you so much, Todd. Before we go, I did want to share a couple of upcoming events. So first of all, we have not even fully announced this yet, but next week we have a very exciting and it's going to be a very interesting Access to Insight. We're going inside of 211 San Diego, which has been an organization that has been at the forefront of a lot of the frontline sort of block and tackle of the coronavirus, and they are a fascinating organization. We're going to be taking a camera in there and doing a tour and learning about some of the insights that they are seeing community-wide. So that's going to be very fascinating, and that is next week. We are then going to be doing a racial justice series, a two-part series coming up in early July. We have two different panels planned. One is going to be with a gentleman who was incarcerated, wrongly incarcerated for 30 years, an African-American gentleman from Alabama. And he will be speaking about his experiences, and we'll be learning from the Equal Justice Initiative. And then we'll also be hearing from 3 local nonprofits that are focused on the African-American communities from very different perspectives. So stay tuned for details of those. And then finally, our rearranged Access to Insights dealing with sports with radio personality Scott Kaplan is on July 30th. So those are all coming up. Before everybody leaves, we'd be very grateful for some quick feedback from everybody. We're going to put up on the screen a poll, and we would love your responses to that poll. So while people are filling out that poll, I will just once again say thank you to David, to Martha, to Maria, and to Todd. This was a fascinating panel. We'll be putting this on our website and also on our YouTube page so that everybody can see this, because I think this will have an equally interested viewership online. So thank you again so much for your time, and we look forward to seeing everyone at one of our future panels.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.